Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. Today, we've got a special guest. We have Jake Fischer from Bleacher Report. You can follow him on Twitter at Jake L. Fischer. Jake, thanks so much for coming on here.
Thank you for having me, man. How you doing?
Doing well. So, Jake, you are the author of Built to Lose, How the NBA's Tanking Era Changed the League Forever. Tanking this season, Keith and I have both been pretty happily surprised by this. Doesn't seem like there's that many teams that are going into the season trying to lose right now. And I know that may change as the season goes on, but for right now, it looks like there's a lot of teams that see themselves, especially now with the play-in tournament, as at least potentially a playoff team.
Yeah, I think every team in the NBA right now, aside from Detroit, OKC, Houston, Orlando, but even Detroit. I mean, Detroit expects to kind of take a step forward, but I think everyone else really thinks their next step is now. That the teams that were out on the play-in tournament, they can make it this year. The teams that were in the play-in tournament think they can, make it to the first round. The teams that were in the first round think they can make it into the second, but inevitably there will be a team that falls short of their goals. We did not think Houston was going to be in a tanking situation heading into last season. We did not think Orlando was going to be. Orlando thought they were going to be a top team in the East before injuries reared their ugly head. So, to keep an eye on San Antonio. There's a couple of other teams that could probably go either way, right? They could be in the playoffs, they could take a stumble, and we could see some trades happen and teams start to regress back to that mean and try to ultimately bottom out and get into a draft that is again considered to have a lot of talent. So it's certainly possible. You're right. Yeah, I think it's really a three-team race right now for that number one pick.
Well, we'll see how that all plays out. But one of the big topics around the NBA right now, and this is something that we even have here at the NBA Front Office Show, we have a Simmons siren. Every time something new happens in the Ben Simmons saga, we sound a siren and we break the whole thing down. This is such a mess. Ben Simmons wants out of Philadelphia. He's not reporting. Now games are being played. The 76ers apparently want more in a trade than what they're being offered. And the whole league is watching. Where is this headed, Jake? What's going to happen here with the Ben Simmons situation?
Like you said, I think most of this war, if you will, to use a word that came out during all this, I think it's been conducted in our business, right, in the news media. And, I don't know what really can change right now, being that you're right. The Sixers, from what I've been told, have not received an offer yet that they're willing to move Ben Simmons for. They are still hoping to eventually trade him for a real superstar, a Damian Lillard, a Bradley Beal, maybe Zach LaVine, if that situation were to go right in Chicago. Although, their first preseason game, it looked like Showtime reincarnate, So all things seem to be trending in the right direction for Chicago right now. But I think the next real true evolution of this is going to happen when the season starts. So, like, if the Sixers start very poorly, maybe that adds to the narrative in terms of just his market value, that Simmons was really valuable to that team last year, and maybe that they're 3-7 without him. Oh my, maybe that adds a little more juice to a team wanting to acquire him. Maybe the Sixers start off really well. They start 3, 6-2, whatever, 7-4, and they say, we don't need to trade Ben. Look how good we're doing, right? And it just try to force their hand to get him to rejoin that team. I don't know, or it's on the other side of things where let's say a team like Sacramento, who's by all accounts has been hesitant to put De'Aaron Fox on the table. What if Fox starts slow? What if the Kings start off 2-8? They're one of those teams that have goals on making a step towards the play-in tournament. What if they don't? And all of a sudden now, they're able to say, De'Aaron might not be our guy. Let's go take a shot at Ben Simmons. I think that's certainly possible too. So I think that's kind of where this thing's conclusion ultimately comes. I think it's going to be dependent on how these teams start their seasons.
I think you're right. Once things change, there's going to be a change in the equation here. And ultimately, maybe it results in a team offering more. Maybe it results in the Sixers being able to accept a little less, maybe a bit of both. And that's what it's going to take in order for this thing to get done. But in the meantime, Ben Simmons is sitting at home. His money is being held up in an escrow account. So that's putting at least some pressure on him, but there's a bigger battle here. A lot of people around the league are looking at this as almost what the 76ers are doing is almost kind of a pushback against the player empowerment era. They're saying, look, there's situations where a player is going to be a free agent in 1 year and they give
Yeah.
their team a heads up. They say, look, I'm not going to re-sign. If you're going to trade me, I'd prefer to go to locations X, Y, and Z. Sometimes that can get a little bit heated, but we've seen that scenario play out multiple times. This is now a guy with 4 years on his contract asking out. And there are people who are saying player empowerment has gone too far and are kind of rooting for the 76ers to just kind of stick it to Ben Simmons here and continue to take money, continue to fine him for when he's not showing up or not pay him for not showing up. And it's also wrapped up in kind of a anti-Klutch sports narrative that's out there as well. How do you perceive that bigger battle that's taken place here?
I think it's real. And I think, the Klutch team, it seems like they thought they could strong arm Daryl Morey as they've strong armed other front office executives in the past into getting accomplished what they wanted to get accomplished, right? Anthony Davis got to the Lakers. Eric Bledsoe got the money he wanted from Phoenix. Tristan Thompson got the money he wanted from Cleveland. So I think ultimately, whether their style works, hats off to them. But I think in this particular scenario, with the 4 years left on his contract, playing against Daryl Morey in this proverbial game of chess, I don't think that this was the right battle to make. I think they have zero leverage, and Daryl Morey, not to obviously his reputation gets puffed up and really celebrated in on our side of the industry a lot,
Mhm.
but he gets paid a lot of money to have the job security to have this brazen negotiating style that he does, and I don't see him caving here. I really don't, and for that, right, I do think Klutch's attempt here, just as an objective observer, I really do think it was a bit misguided. And I think that's why, Kyle Neubeck at the Philly Voice reported
Yeah.
last night that they're calling the players union, wanting to, make for sure, please, can we get that money? And they said no. Like it's an escrow, but once you're fined, that money's gone, and it's only going to continue. And I don't think Ben Simmons is the type of Kyrie Irving superstar with all these massive revenue streams coming in, with a big Nike deal and other
Mhm.
endorsements. Like Ben Simmons is a star, but I don't think losing all these game checks is ultimately going to be something that he wants to do, and that's why you're starting to hear rampant, speculation and growing whispers, as I wrote last week. And I've heard them from people who are involved with Klutch that he is considering going back, and will maybe tweak an ankle. Let's say
Yeah.
that's kind of what the Pelicans did. What they did with the Pelicans and Anthony Davis, right? He was there and he was hurt, um, and he wasn't able to play, but he was trying to get out of there and didn't want to get hurt before a deal that would have lowered his value, that would have made the Pelicans not do it. So it seems to be a similar playbook, right? And one that I don't think is going to be successful this time around. I think ultimately he will be traded and go to a different situation. But I think they've played their cards, um, you know, in a suboptimal way. I really do, and I don't have anything against Clutch at all. I just
Yeah.
think that's what I think. I don't think they've benefited from this situation at all. I don't think they or Ben Simmons have put themselves in a better situation than they were, 6 months ago.
Well, and there's a flip side to this too, as Keith and I have talked about quite a bit. When you're in a situation now where it makes more sense to sign an extension, didn't used to be this way for a while, and some players are still in this situation. It made more sense for a player to become a free agent based on league rules, and then that would give them the opportunity to go somewhere else if they wanted to. Now players are more incentivized to sign an extension with the team, and then they're asking out. And that's why we're seeing more players that are signing on with the team and then asking for a trade later. And there's some teams that do go into negotiations and say, look, if you sign this contract and it's not working out, come to us, we'll work with you, and we'll find a trade. That's what the Oklahoma City Thunder did with Paul George. And so there's an argument to be made there that teams are better off, as unseemly as it is right now, teams are better off in the situation they're at right now, where players are more likely to ask for a trade because then you get something back rather than just leave in free agency. But regardless, this is going to be this is not a good look for anybody involved, for the 76ers, for Ben Simmons, for Klutch Sports, for the NBA. So I have to wonder, where's the middle ground here beyond just players are more prone to being free agents and get to go their own way that way and land where they want to land. And here they're more locked under contract. They've got better extension opportunities, but then that results in them asking out when they want to find a new situation.
Yeah, it's something that I think will be addressed in the new CBA, but there needs to be a solution. I think ultimately players should have the ability to decide to go play wherever they want. However, if you do sign a contract with a team, to say, trade me somewhere else just because you don't want to be there anymore, as much as teams, the Sixers have it within their right to trade
Mhm.
players whenever they want, and that's kind of been the big pushback that players have always had, right? It's, well, you can trade me anytime. How come I can't? How come I can't request to do the
Right.
same? I think part of the massive salaries that these guys make, I think it's baked into that concept that when you are signing for that amount of money, you are subject to being traded. That is in the contract. It is not in the contract that you're able to request a trade. That's why you get fined when you publicly come out
Mhm.
and request a trade. So I do think there needs to be some type of firmer, stronger action to give teams more benefit here. Again, I'm all in favor of players wanting to go where they want to go, but I think it's more of a. I think it's far more in good taste if that move is done. What, like you said, when you're in the last year of your
Yeah.
deal, you realize you want to go somewhere else in free agency anyway, and you want to help the team. I mean, it's just I think it can help all sides involved, right? Teams don't have to shed salary space, and they can do whatever they need to acquire you, and it allows the team having you walk to ultimately get something back in return, right? So I think it makes sense to do that then, but doing it at the beginning of a deal like this, even Damian Lillard in Portland, I think it's just a slippery slope. I really do, because think about it in the Portland situation, right? If the Blazers trade Damian
Yeah.
Lillard for Ben Simmons, let's say hypothetically, or if they trade him for anybody that's not, a buzzy, could this be the guy again type guy, the Blazers could fall off the map. That franchise could really plummet, and I think that's not fair. In terms of just fair business dealings. Being a party that signs a deal and commits to being part of something. To to recognize the ramifications of your actions of backing out on that contract and want to play somewhere else. I think that should have bigger consequences.
Yeah, yeah, that I think that's certainly fair and something the NBA is going to be taking a look at their next CBA. A lot of people are going to be interested. Let's finish with this, Jake. There's been a lot of names brought up as far as landing spots for Simmons, right? We've heard a lot of. We've heard the Wolves, we've heard the Cavs, we've heard the Pacers, we've heard some teams, the Sacramento Kings, some teams who maybe wouldn't normally be a landing spot for star players. They're trying to get in there and land somebody via trade. In your mind, what's the ideal result here? What's the ideal landing spot in terms of what the Sixers can get back, as well as where Ben Simmons should be able to kind of play moving forward? What would be the best spot for him?
I like the Sacramento thing I mentioned earlier. I haven't heard they've had conversations by any means, but to me, it's made sense for the Thunder to do a Shea Gilgeous-Alexander Ben Simmons swap. They've got so many picks anyway, and maybe in that vacuum where there's not a lot of pressure, there's a bunch of young guys. Maybe Ben can really find himself again and reemerge as that all star type guy that he became. And then the Thunder can flip him for something more.
Hmm.
That seems to make sense to me. But again, I haven't heard those conversations have happened. Maybe it's San Antonio where there's been the connections. With Brett Brown, and there's a lot of talk about Brett Brown rejoining that Spurs franchise at some point in time. And Chip England is, the premier shooting coach in the league by all accounts. So if that's his biggest weakness, he's the man kind of credited for helping retool Kawhi's jumper.
Hmm.
So imagine that type of transformation for Ben. I think those are the situations that I'm looking out for. Minnesota clearly has strong interest in him. The Pacers haven't whispers haven't gone away, but I just don't think I think it's going to take a change in a team's position, like we talked about, for a deal to really get done.
Very true. Very true. We'll see where he ultimately winds up. This drama does continue, and I'm sure the Simmons siren will be sounding very soon because there's always another twist and turn in this story. Jake, thanks so much for coming on here and joining us. Really appreciate it.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me.
Guys, make sure you do go follow Jake on Twitter at Jake L. Fischer. Till next time, everybody, stay safe and see ya.